Martin, Happy New Year, and thanks for taking time to speak with me.
You betcha. It's awesome.
It's we were talking a little bit offline, and this is what happens. You start chatting for a few minutes, and you're like, because this is, I think people will find this interesting. I was telling you how my X feed, it's a dumpster fire all the time, and I question myself of like, is it being jammed down our throats intentionally? Like, for example, Dan Bongino, I don't follow him, but I'm seeing all of his posts right now. I'm seeing all of his posts and I'm seeing all the arguments that he's getting on with people, and which is fine, but I don't even subscribe to any of it. So why am I being subjected to it?
Yeah. I think with Twitter, they've adopted some of the same algorithms as what we see on Facebook, Instagram. My wife was talking the other day about getting a couch, and I never even mentioned it or searched for it on my phone. And next thing you know, I use Marketplace to do some stuff, and next thing you know, I've got a bunch of couches on my Marketplace. The same thing's happening in Twitter. You can see it now. I've made some commentary on Venezuela, and we can talk about that later. But next thing you know, the same thing. I'm getting all of these feeds from these people in Venezuela and these other people that I don't even follow, and it ties into a broader theme of social media trying to hijack our I call it the right brain, the right brain thinking for us, and telling us what we need to see and hear, and as a result, many of us just outsource our thinking.
Do you think that they've already been successful in that, and maybe not? I mean, I'm going to be 48. I mean, I've caught
Yeah,
myself emotionally getting wrapped up in it because,
yeah.
and then they win, right? When you get emotionally charged by reading something. But do you think that they've been successful? Maybe not my age group or older, but with the younger generation.
I think you're bang on. So if you look at studying demographics, and you look at Gen Z, you look at millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. The baby boomers and millennials are very rules based, conformist. And I hate to make a generalization, but a lot of the reading that like The Fourth Turning and other books that I've read, you are a product of your offspring and the environment that you're in. And so if you're rules based and you find comfort in those rules, you're not going to question what you're seeing and what you're hearing. And in Gen X, we're a smaller percentage, and I'm Gen X as well too. We're very rebellious, questioning. I don't know about you, but when I was young, I was left alone during the summers and to do what I was going to do, and I'd go out and come back whenever I did at night, and there wasn't as much structure. So Gen X are the ones that are pushing back and saying this isn't true or this is. So you can see that among the demographics. And so going back to your question, in Canada, for example, you had this election more recently, and you had this elbows up themes from the Liberal government and about a fight pushing back against some of the stuff that we saw out of Donald Trump administration, and that resonated really well with the baby boomer generation in Canada, who dominate the major voting regions that supported the electing the existing Liberal government in power, and Gen X and maybe Gen Z, not millennials, were saying, well, that's not necessarily the case. We got problems in Canada that have nothing to do with Donald Trump, and we're not hearing anything about that. So it can absolutely influence behavior and voting, and so it isn't surprising to see that play out in various platforms.
Do you think that do you think the 2008 GFC would have been much worse had social media and the ability to share information and put out false information as quick as you could? Would it have been globally worse?
Well, I mean, we have to look at 2020 because it was a pretty material event with COVID shutdowns, and that was a great example of the rhetoric that we saw on all sides, and I think that would be the greater scenario that you would want to look at. the financial crisis of '08, um, there was a lot more substance to it. I don't think people really understood it as much as what you could understand around COVID. So perhaps we would have seen maybe a rebound come quicker, not as prolonged of a downturn what we saw and play out similar to COVID.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way because yeah, 2020 was a basis for because these apps were much more viable and a lot
Yeah,
more people were using them. In 2008, the iPhone had just come out in '07, I think.
yeah,
God,
yeah.
what a better world we lived in, you and I, when we grew up in.
And I have two kids, so this is new. I mean, we have to learn to adapt and how to teach our kids. Sometimes they're teaching us, right?
I mean, we played outside. Movies were still good. But
Yeah.
I mean, they say that people will say, well, the older generation always says it was a better time, but I legitimately think it was a better time when we grew up versus the younger generation.
Well, there's no record of it, so that's why it was a better time because we could get away with a lot more than than the kids can now.
The so I want to talk about Venezuela and get your thoughts on that as we sit here today. What is today? Today's Tuesday, January 6th. And it's moving so fast. I mean, I saw more gunfire last night, but then I haven't seen. That's the other thing too with social media. You don't know. You see a video, you don't even know
Yeah.
where it's from. Like they showed people supposedly celebrating in Venezuela, and then somebody else said it was from the World Cup or something. Like you have
Yeah.
no idea where this stuff is coming from.
And then also, if you are able to connect with people who are there, there's check stops that are checking your social media, and so there people down there are very reluctant to posting things on social media because there still is the existing regime in power, especially on the streets, and you don't want to get caught with anything that is supporting or celebrating a change in that regime. And so it's really hard. You're right because I mean there was something Polymarket put out a tweet that there was a coup and it had just and then we found out it was just shooting of drones that were their existing drones. So I mean there's just so much misinformation and that's where again going back to there's left brain and right brain thinking. Your left brain and there's a great book by Dr. Ian McGilchrist called The Master's Emissary. I highly recommend it, and it talks about how we become a left brain society and it's very analytical and we're lacking on taking all of that data and forming a proper big picture, which is your right brain. And so we've outsourced our right brain thinking for us because it's become lazy and we're just looking at things black and white. And the world isn't black and white, some shade of gray. And we need to exercise our ability to make an informed decision. And that means asking questions whether this is true or not. And that's scary with artificial intelligence because, as you know, it gets things wrong all the time. And if like old folks like us have exercised our right brain, we had no choice to over the years. We know when something doesn't make sense, and we can say, "Hey, that doesn't make sense. Can you revisit this?" And I don't think a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, that was my concern with the whole evolution of AI, even just as something as ChatGPT, because you know how people are. They will resort to that, and they won't fact check it. They won't
Yeah,
do any research, and
yeah,
that's a big, big, big concern because
yeah,
there's no measures in place to call any of it out.
yeah, yeah. And so people who can think creatively and demonstrate that big picture thinking are going to excel in this new world that we're in. And those who have built up their career on left brain analytical thinking, memorizing and regurgitating, you've been disrupted majorly. And so you're going to have to adapt. And I think that's why uh, we used to have elders and we used to listen to our grandparents because they would tell us these stories and these parables and even in the Bible, the parables of Christ and in Buddhism, and and that's your right brain thinking. That is exercising thought outside of the ego and recognizing and trying to find the truth, right? And what is truth? Asking those sorts of things. And you tend not to do that until you get older, until you're at your half life or longer. And then you start not to give a shit about what other people think. And then you're like, okay, I don't care what I'm not trying to impress anybody. I just want to figure out what's going on. And because if I can figure out what's going on, then maybe I can adapt to this new paradigm that we're in. And that's a form of resilience. That's the future. That's where I think Gen X has this distinct advantage. There's not many of us, but we're always asking questions and we're always rebelling and fighting the system, and we're not complying. We're not, and that's really troubling for a baby boomer or millennial because they're trying to place us in a box. Because if I'm criticizing the Liberal government of Canada, they're naturally trying to put me in the box of supporting Trump administration. And if I'm criticizing the Trump administration, they're putting me in the box of saying I'm, an Antifa liberal or whatever the case may be. And I'm like screw you. I'm none of that. I just want to get the truth of the matter, right? And I think that's a distinct advantage of Gen X.
Yeah, the boomers really hate us. Not all of them. There's always exceptions to the rule. Because I'm gonna get some heat for this. And some of my very good friends are boomers, but they really despise us.
Well, I think that's a generalization. I think it's more along the
Total
lines of
generalization. Total
no,
generalization.
like to be fair, like we have a lot of our clients are baby boomers, and they're awesome. And but the distinct notion of a lot of our clients tend to be entrepreneurs. And by being an entrepreneur, you have no choice but to adapt and to learn and to question and to break the rules and to try and find a way to survive. Where that complacency falls in is if you're within public service, you're receiving a pension plan, you worked for the government for a good part of your career, you find comfort in those rules. Whereas entrepreneurs, I think they break down all segments of demographics. It's just this is the nature of the beast. I have to adapt because if I get complacent, I'm going to get crushed. And so I think there's that at play as well.
How relevant is AI and the disruption it's going to cause in the job market as you see it today?
Oh, it's going to be significant. For example, I spent 10 years in investment banking before I started Trivest, a boutique investment firm. And a lot of the work that I did can be done by AI in a fraction of the time. And for example, I'm using it all day and I'm talking to it. And I use multiple platforms, some more than others because of the lockdown of data. But I'm talking to it all day and it's learning from me in my conversations and it's adapting to that. Now, that's a good thing and sometimes a bad thing because I want to make sure that it's always questioning and not just accepting what I'm saying. But it's almost like an associate. It's almost like a team of associates working for me because I can, and again, I think of them as, I think that relationship as an associate, because if it's an associate, it's going to be wrong sometimes. And so that AI is going to be wrong as well. So I'm not looking at it as a perfect solution. I'm looking at it as a replacement. So all of a sudden now I've got 2 or 3 people that I've replaced with one or two platforms. And that's troubling for younger people who are trying to get in the business because I always recommend if you're going to start a restaurant, start washing dishes at a restaurant and work your way up, learn everything you can about the business. Well, how are you going to do that when AI is going to be washing the dishes for you, right? You can't come in at the senior level. So you have to find something unique as a young person that you're going to be able to offer me and others in my business or other businesses. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe you need to go in other areas like trades that you can't disrupt, right?
Tell you what, Martin, you know what I would do? My friend and I talk about this. I'd be an elevator repairman. I've never met one. Have you ever met one? I've never met one.
No, but they're always breaking down.
Got a lot of elevators around, man, and I've never met one. You think at some point you come across one, but
Yeah.
and how many are out there in each city? Probably not a lot. Probably a ton of work.
Yeah. The way someone explained to me about AI is think of it like Iron Man. I know it's pretty tacky, but you've got Tony Stark. He's still controlling the suit, and you have Joffrey or whatever. He's talking to it, right? And it's giving him superpowers. So Tony Stark is your right brain exercising big picture decisions. He's still in control, but yet it's giving him all the strength and ability to achieve his objectives, and he's wearing that suit to do it. So that's the way I look at it. And you need to be Tony Stark. You need to be the innovator, the creator, the find ways to bring that unique thinking because the world needs more of it.
Yeah, and the question that I have, and I'm gonna ask you because in terms of the future of AI, yeah, I see the potential, but in regards to the AI bubble and all these data centers that they're building, is the technology there to justify everything that they're investing right now?
I don't think so. I mean, we're in the mid stages of it. It really does remind me of the Internet of Things in the 2000s. I went through it. It reminds me a lot of what we saw um, well, that was the mid 1990s, and in the early 2000s, the energy run, where China was building these empty cities, and energy benefited from that until it didn't. And I think we're going to overcapitalize this segment of the market. We're a ways away from that though. But would it surprise me in 10 years from now that we're blowing up data centers across, continents? No. And the efficiencies of running artificial intelligence are going to expand significantly. So we won't need this type of power requirements and the physical infrastructure that we think we do need. I mean, look at this. I mean, this is huge. Look how far this has come in our lifetime as to processing and capability. What's to think that what's to stop us from doing that with AI? And when does that happen? I don't know, but there's going to be a lot of losers in this AI build out and a lot of lost money. But some people will make a lot of money in the near term.
Well, why do you think then that they're continuing to build these things everywhere?
Well, it's capital's looking for a home, and there's a lot of capital out there. Again, talking about generational aspects, baby boomers have a lot of money. Stocks are at all-time highs. Housing prices have done well, and capital's looking for a home, and it wants to get a decent rate of return. And you're looking at public markets going forward. You look at price to earnings multiples. When you look going back the last 40 years, whenever PE multiples are at current levels, the forward returns over 10 years have been, 2 to 4%, which is not going to cut it in a world where we're printing a pile of money and we're having currency debasement. And so they're looking at capital, there's a lot of capital looking for a home, doesn't want to buy bonds, doesn't want to buy treasuries, and is looking for growth. And there's a lot of momentum in that space right now, and rightly so because the potential is huge. But I've seen it before many times being in capital markets. It's like energy, oil prices. It's like everything else. It gets overinvested in, and then it corrects significantly, and then it's underinvested in, and then rinse, lather, repeat.
How how concerned are you where things are right now from a global standpoint, economically, with some of the things we just touched on? We talked about 2008. Are we on the precipice of something substantial in your view in the short term, short or long term?
Absolutely. Again, referencing the fourth turning
He's
book,
coming on
which
my
I have.
show. He's come not to interrupt you. Neil will be on my show next week.
Oh, awesome.
I've never met
I'm
him
gonna
before,
tune
so
in.
I'm excited to talk to him.
Yeah, it's every 80-year cycles, and we're at that end of that cycle, and we went through a major event like COVID, and things changed significantly following that event. Governments borrowed significant amount of money and put it into the economy, and they haven't stopped. They're continuing to spend despite the economies having fully recovered from the COVID situation. They've become addicted to fiscal spending. Now, we started in 2008 by printing a lot of money through quantitative easing, and it was Bernanke did a fantastic job of preventing another 1929 situation because the Fed stepped in appropriately. But again, people got a taste of that liquidity, and it kept coming, it kept going, and kept going, and kept going, and accelerated significantly after 2020. And now you're throwing on government spending, and balance sheets have been depleted. And so as a result, we're seeing very large debasement of society. What I mean by that is this sovereign spending is reached a point where they can't. They have to raise taxes. They have to find other ways to do so to continue to spend, or they print money to buy their debt, which is happening again. And so as a result, you have, if you think about it, housing prices in the U.S. to go back to 2019 levels, housing prices have to fall 40% or incomes need to go up by 60%. Neither's going to, I mean, there's no way salaries are going to go up. And so if you're a young person who don't own any assets, you got to buy a house at 10 to 15 times your income and take on a 50-year mortgage now because that's what, so trying to give you credit to do it. I mean, you just been crushed by that debasement. Now, if you're an older person, your house has gone up, your stocks have gone up, you don't even notice anything. So there's a whole class of people that have not participated in capitalism because of the devaluation of the currency, and they're upset and they're going to extremes as a means of protest, like in New York City, and going extreme left. And I think that's a theme that's happening globally. And that played out pre-World War II. The same thing. People were like going extreme socialism, extreme fascism, and because they just were the society had moved to a point when we saw gold when Roosevelt came in and confiscated gold, and they said if you don't give your gold, you'll be a $10,000 fine, and then they because gold was linked to the currency, and then they took it in at 25 bucks, and then when they took it all in, they repriced gold at 38 bucks. So they've always been trying to play this game.
Yeah, and that's where I think going back to the generational between the boomers and the Gen Zs, that the connection, the breakdown is right now because to your point, the younger generation, not only the housing they can't afford, but it's the insurance, it's the car,
Everything.
it's getting squeezed every direction.
No, I honestly, I don't know how they. My first job, I got out of school. I worked at a bank. I made $28,000 in 1996, and I was able to pay rent. I had a renovated, rebuilt a Mustang, so I had that for my summer car, a shitbox winter car, and I could do a trip to Mexico, all on 28 grand. Okay, and I'm sounding like my grandfather now, but if you think about it, right? Like when I bought my first house, it was two times my income, right? Now it's 10 to 12 times. You're like, why would I even bother? I don't. Why, now I'm locked in, and so there's that level of anxiety. Why would I even bother building and working something? So what's happening is that younger generations are turning to quick wins, gambling, daily option trading. They're like, I can't do it the old-fashioned way, so I'm gonna have to take big risk with my capital to try. Because I'm seeing these things on Instagram about people flying in private jets and everything else. But they're gonna eventually, as you know, if you ever follow any of Ed Thorpe's work, and he's been amazing. If you don't have the edge, and the house has the edge, the longer you play, the greater the chance you're going to lose. So these young people are going to they're going to lose their shirt even more so, and then there's no hope at all.
Yeah, the younger generation, that the ones that I speak with, they love the Bitcoin. Every
Well,
single one
because
of
you
them.
have no choice. I mean, they're always looking. I was talking to my son's friend. They're all big skiers, and we have a position in silver. I'm trying to figure out what to do with it because we've made a lot of money. It's turned into a highly speculative asset, and he was grilled me all weekend about silver, because they're trying to get that quick win instead of playing the long game because they don't want to play a long game because they don't see a high chance of success.
These jobs and the corporate, they don't want to work these corporate jobs because they see the misery. Not all of them. I'm generalizing again, but they don't want to do it.
And to be honest, corporations are have, especially even in tech, haven't been treating their employees very well. I wrote a whole piece about it in the post about if you're going to be a successful company, you need to treat your employees like partners, or even better, treat them like clients. Number one on a corporation, if you treat your employee like the client, then they're going to treat your client the same way. And then your shareholders are going to make money, and shareholders are going to make a bunch of money. Instead, it's the shareholders, financial engineering, share buybacks that are driving the bus. Then it's the client, and then the employee last. Why would I want to be a part of that?
And you go into these jobs, and I've been in that world where you you Monday Sunday night you have the Sunday blues, knowing that you're going to spend the next 5 days in there,
Oh,
and you're walking up the stairs Monday morning with your coworkers, and they all feel the same way. And you sit down, you talk about the weekend, you all kind of look at each other like, oh, here we go again. Where are we going to
yeah.
lunch today? That's all you're looking forward to is where you're going to go to lunch.
Yep, yep. And in many of the jurisdictions, including Canada and the US, the fastest growing segment is public service, working for the government. And that's even more soul draining. You punch the clock, you come in, slide it. You're not valued. You're not rewarded for taking risk. You're actually punished if you get it wrong. So you're not going to take risk. Living your life like that we're not meant to be. We're always meant to be moving forward. We're always meant to be asking questions. We're always meant to be living in an environment that we're watching around us, something's going to eat us. Going in an environment where it's monotonous, it's not good for you and not good for your health, and it's not good for society. And in Canada, the largest segment of growth has been public service, public sector by 40%. And the private sector is only up, half of that. So we're becoming, and you look at socialist countries, and how happy with the happiness index were under those types of environments. It's not. The government tells you and your kid from day one what kind of job you're going to do. And if I was told that I had a speech impediment, that's why I don't speak French. I was put in an Anglophone school. The speech pathologist said I'd be lucky to make it through grade six. So I wouldn't even be where I am today if I was in a socialist system. And they said I'd be, pushing a broom. Not there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to give people a chance to be who they are.
There was I'll tell you this quick story. The other day, I live in Arizona, and I was out for a run out in the desert, and just sitting at the top of this little mountain. And I was talking to this young guy on a mountain bike, and he was 18, and just striking up conversation. And he tells me he wants to be a mechanical engineer, and he was going in the fall. He's going to live at the dorm, but he doesn't want to live at the dorm. He doesn't want to go to college. All he wants to do is work on cars and design
Oh,
engines.
yeah.
But his parents are making him go. And I said, I go, well, be optim, enjoy it, enjoy the time you're going to be down there. You never know who you're going to meet and whatever. I go, you're probably going to end up coming home every weekend to be in your parents' garage to keep working on these cars. Because that's what he was so excited about that. Like I talked to him for 10 minutes. He was so excited about it, Martin, to like just work on cars and design engines.
So why does he do it?
Well, he's going to continue to do it, but his parents want him to go to a school. They want him to go to university. They want him to live in the dorm, do the experience, do the whole college experience. And
That whole thing may be done. Like that worked for you and I. That was the way out, right? And that was the way you could, I came from a lower middle class family, and my parents worked their ass off to help us out. And the way out, I was in a small town. The way out was to go to school, and then you got a job and you graduated. But now I think it's like one in four when they graduate, you can't find work. And then you take on all this debt, and you're like, I don't know what I want to do, but all I know is now I've got 4 years of a degree that I can't use. I got this debt and I can't get a job. Maybe I'll go work on cars, which I always love doing. So, maybe you skip the process, and I don't want to. Hopefully, that kid's parents aren't watching this, or he's not going to show this. But you know, fuck it. Pardon my language, but you know, go find a place to work on cars that's really unique, that you can add value, and if you love doing it, man, do it. And there's a greater chance of if you finding there's going to be a whole shortage of mechanics. I know there are people that need to work on cars because the whole class, the K-shaped economy, they're keeping their, that's why electric cars aren't selling as fast, because most people are buying 10, 15-year-old cars because they can't afford a new one at 80 grand, and then they need a mechanic to fix it. And there's not enough mechanics out there. And so, go and do it. And then on the weekends, do work on high-end cars for the wealthy people who want to get a specialized car. So just find a way to make it work.
Well, and especially too, I think a lot of these online courses, or these courses you can get access to online without ever having to pay
Yeah,
for it.
yeah, absolutely. Right?
Do you see a big consolidation in the university market where all these schools
Well,
are not going to be needed?
well, we're in a crisis now in Canada because we have ours is subsidized by the government, which is kind of cool. I mean, it only cost me a couple $1,000 to go to school. But in order to help offset the rising costs, we flooded in a whole bunch of foreign students, and paying top dollar. So that meant less spots. So we had free something really cheap, but you couldn't use it because you couldn't get in. So, but now they're leaving, and for a number of different reasons, and now the schools are suffering. So that creates an opportunity for younger people to get in. But I do worry about how the institutions have evolved to the point of extreme leftism, and how that's been. I just don't want my kids exposed to that, especially even in business or economics. I see some of the posts. I know some of the advisors to our government that implemented some disastrous policies economically, listening to academia. The reason why I'm a little bit frustrated with that is because I think those in academia don't understand risk, and because you have a tenured position with a defined benefit plan, and the rest of us have to work our ass off, and we can get fired any day, and we may not have a pension plan, or you have health care in some cases in the U.S. And so you have the comfort and the luxury of making these idealistic calls when it doesn't cost you anything and it costs everybody else. And our governments are listening to these institutions and people at those institutions. And I don't want my kids to be privy to that anymore. I think it's done. And it's very frustrating. It's a lot more. I mean, I had a conversation with the University of Alberta, outstanding school, but talking with some of my son's friends, they said you wouldn't even believe it anymore. It is on the verge of Marxism in some departments, and that I find that very frustrating.
You know, I want to get your take on what it appears that the Trump administration is attempting to do with the Genius Act, the destabilization or the devaluing of the dollar, and the rise in precious metals. You touched on silver, that you own silver and you're not sure what you're going to do with it. But what are your thoughts right now, seeing what they are? It appears they're attempting to do.
Well, the Trump administration is very concerning because of the lack of clarity as to the future direction that they're going. Often you'll say one thing and they'll do another, or for example, cutting the deficit. We've seen nothing there. In fact, it's been expanding, and that's very concerning because they're flooding the market with short-term notes, and that's impacting the repo market and SOFR rates, and the market can only absorb so much of it. Foreign countries are not buying those treasuries as much anymore. They're buying gold. And as a result, the Federal Reserve is having to step in to create stability by actually now buying those bills. Now, fortunately, they do have a component of their balance sheet mortgage-backed securities, so they're trying to balance by one balance sheet with the other, so they're not actually printing money. They're trying to stay neutral that way. But eventually, that mortgage-backed security side of things will be drained as well as a reverse repo, and there's nothing left other than just printing. And so people are looking at that and saying, well, okay, debasement works really well with stocks and Bitcoin because Bitcoin's a levered way of playing that. But there's tremendous volatility in those segments and other things that can influence it besides just debasement. Let's say there's a tech correction or whatever the case may be, and Bitcoin's a derivative of that, and that won't offer any protection. So if you look at Bitcoin, it's had in the last 4 or 5 years like four greater than 60% drawdowns. I don't know about you. but I want something that's safe. I don't want to have a 60% drawdown. I just not, that's going to until that changes, it's not going mainstream. And stocks have had 30% drawdowns, including stocks and bonds. So that's becoming a little bit more troublesome. And so they're looking at things like gold and saying, oh, let's just go back old fashioned here. Silver is a derivative, like a Bitcoin is on the market, or the Nasdaq is on the S&P. Silver is a derivative of gold, and it's a levered way in my view. Although it does have more industrial use, and there's more like solar and other areas. Um, but just talking about gold, people are like, I understand it, I get it, it's always been there. It doesn't have huge drawdowns like we see with other segments. I'm just going to own that. And central banks are doing the same thing globally, with the exception of Canada, because we don't own any gold.
Yeah, you guys, isn't it like one of the lowest, if not lowest amounts?
We have none,
Oh.
zero. And we want to shut down our energy sector. So we're really going to be in a pickle.
Will you move? Will you stay in Canada?
I'm in Alberta, so I'm in the eye of the hurricane. So we're kind of like the safest spot in all of Canada for now. But I think I'm okay. I do worry about my kids and the opportunities for my kids. I'm in a situation where I'm set things up. So if things turn south in Canada, I'm okay. But I worry about my kids and their future. And where do they end up? I don't know. If I was in a boat and choose where we could go for my kids, I don't have an answer for that yet. I don't know. I've been looking at all kinds of. It's a mess in the U.S. too, in certain states, and it's a mess in Mexico. It's a mess in Europe. Eastern Europe's looking really interesting, but maybe I'll do some more due diligence and get over to Croatia on the beach and think about it over over a cocktail.
Well, and this is the other thing too. Like, as we're 6 days into 2026, what will the end of the year? I mean, nobody knows, but I don't expect inflation to go away. Do you?
Well, depending how you define inflation, right? And so like baseline inflation, the cost of the goods, I mean, we're running at 2 to 3%, 3%. I mean, I think it's important to separate where the spending is. You have 10, 15% of population responsible for 50% of the consumption. So you have a very wealthy small group of people that are driving all of the consumption. And that's a lot of that's going towards services. And I have a friend that moved to Florida actually from Calgary, health and wellness for baby boomers who are 70 to 80 years old. There's a bunch of money being allocated. So there can be inflation in there. My colleague at the office was in Whistler, if you know where Whistler is, and a popular destination owned by Vail Resorts. And he was staying with a friend who actually had a house there, but needed to get a room for the night. A standard room, just a single bed, was 2,500 bucks for one night. And if you want to go skiing, it's 350 bucks. So he wasn't going to pay that. But a lot of people are. And so you have that, and that's going to continue to be inflated. But you have a whole swath like gasoline demand is really low, and that's why I'm a bear on oil right now because I think the people that consume oil are the bottom majority of the population that are just struggling day to day to pay their bills, to pay their utility bills, to pay their rent. Rent, I saw a thing today. Rent's now 50% of your income, and so you've got that. So you're just trying to get by, and so you're not going to see a lot of inflation on because they can't. So if tariffs come in, you're not going to see that passed along to the consumer because they can't. Walmart and Costco, they can't do it because those people are reached their threshold. And so we're going to have the separation of the two. And so that's what I mean by inflation. But you're continuing to see debasement to the value of your dollars. I mean, we're already our dollars, only the US dollar is 74% of its purchasing power prior to COVID. I mean, that's insane.
Hence, a $40,000 RAV4 is $40,000 to $45,000, I think, right now.
That's insane.
That's what I said. I'm not going to pay that. I will not pay that for a car like that. I like RAV4s. I'm not going to pay 40 grand for that.
So you can go like my son, this is Canadian dollars, but my son, my parents chipped in. Grandparents always buy their first grandson or granddaughter a car, and we bought him a 2018 Audi A3, 100,000 clicks, for $14,000. And I'll do that trade all day long. And that's the problem with electric because you're going to go buy an electric car. It lasts for 8 years with your batteries. You're going to drop 40, 50K, right? And then you're done. I just told you I bought a car that was 8 years old for 14 grand. That's 100,000 clicks. And I can drive that thing for at least another 5, 6 years. And it's safe for my kid. Why in the hell am I going to go do the other thing? Right? And I think that's why gasoline demand is going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Well, and do you see the K-shaped economy, is it going to continue to widen?
Yeah. And, until the point of huge let them eat cake. There'll be huge economic disparity. And there's a fellow I worked with. His name is Henry Groppe. And Mr. Groppe, this is when I was in energy. And I traveled the world with him. And I was fortunate. He was in his 80s. I was in my 30s. He was an advisor to the Bush administration. I can't remember which one, but one of them anyway, because he's old enough to do. I've done both. And he always told me, he said, look at demographics of the society, and the younger people are in the Middle East, and at that time, and if you don't find young people work, so either you pay them or you find work for them, they're going to tear apart the country, right? And so in those jurisdictions, they've been able to spend, like Saudi Arabia, it's not necessarily the break-even price. They're spending a lot of money to keep the younger people happy. Now, in the US and in Canada, I just told you, 1 in 4 people graduating are not getting work, right? You have a lot of young people that aren't very happy. And we just talked about how the future looks pretty dismal, right? So if they're not happy and they're not making money, they're going to tear apart the country. And that's going to happen. That's going to happen not just in Canada, it's going to happen in the US and other areas. And we're seeing it happen in New York. That's why people are protesting, right? So the big question is, does it accelerate from here? How fast does it accelerate? Or can Trump or any government, facilitate a situation where these young people are going to be better off? And I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't see that happening either. And people will push back and say, there's no hope, no hope. No, I'm just being objective and looking where it's taken us how long to get to this point, to get us out on the other side, whatever that would look like. It would take decades. And I don't see anybody really motivated to change it at this point that has the ability to do it in government.
You need a reset. Unfortunately, you need a reset. And so if we had allowed 2008, we had to do what we had to do. But if we actually allowed it to reset properly and have asset prices reset society. Yes, there's some short-term pain, but we have to do that. We have to think about our kids and grandkids. We have to think about why our parents and grandparents took the risk. I'm a direct descendant of the first Pelletier families, 5 families that came to Canada. I'm one of the direct descendants of the 5 founding families. And they came to Canada in 1648. This is in my book it'll be out next year. But one of the 5 founding families, they came here because there was no opportunities in France. And they came here with nothing. And then my grandfather moved to Alberta in 1805 from Quebec to get land from the railroad because there was no opportunities in Quebec. It was a pretty shit start to life. They landed by train and they had to build a cabin, or often just dug a hole in the ground till they could build a cabin. And then they built something not for themselves, but for their kids and for me. And so we have to think about that. We have to think about what are we leaving behind instead of just consuming just for me and let the kids figure it out because we're just leaving them a mess.
How hard is it for you as a parent, knowing that your family? It's amazing, your family history. You know yours a lot better than I know mine. I couldn't tell you when my great grandparents. Well, my grandfather came from Lebanon on my father's
Yeah.
side,
Oh, wow.
but how hard is it for you to convey these messages to your kids? So because they don't know where you
Yeah.
came from, they don't know where their grandparents, they don't
Yeah.
know that struggle. So I'm always curious because I'm not a parent. How do you best you can convey that message to the younger generation?
It's really hard because my kids have a hell of a lot more than what I had growing up. And my grandfather lived to 102, and so I got to spend some time with him. and ask them questions. Those people are gone now, right? And so they can't ask those questions. So they have to read about it. And when you read about it, it's not the same as listening to somebody, right? And so that is my toughest point is to help them push through the anxiety and because they only see the success that I've had or we've had. They're not seeing the path that it took to get here, which was a heck of a path. I was working 70-hour work weeks and gone 3 months of the year traveling. Like and a lot of kids don't want to do that anymore, right? And maybe they're not seeing the same kind of rewards. So that is a real challenge as a parent is to help your kids. But I think you just have to be patient. Number one, I listened to my wife. My wife said, "Don't compare yourself to them. They're different. They're going to take a little bit longer than you do, but be their safety net and encourage them to take risks." And I take, if you follow me on Twitter, as you can see, I take some risks outside of the office. I do a lot of crazy shit skiing and mountain biking and I'm trying to use those things that I'm doing with my kids to demonstrate, hey, look, you're doing these risks. I mean, my kids are pretty kick-ass skiers and they're doing double backflips and stuff. I'm like, you're doing this crazy stuff skiing and you're having fun, you're taking risks. Do the same thing in life. And if you crash, I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to help you out. Just don't do a stupid crash. And if you do, I'll help you out once. The second time, you're going to be on your own. But trying to take those personal life situations and apply it to because they are overwhelmed, they are paralyzed by the uncertainty of the future.
Yeah, I my last grandparent died. She was 103, and that generation they were just built tough.
Oh God, yeah, they had to be. You had to. So I did you can go on if you're ever in Calgary, I'll take you out to it. But there's Heritage Park, and they have a train set up, and it's a train coming from Montreal to Edmonton on the CPR, and it could actually be the same train my grandfather was on, and they role play as if you're going on that trip. And if you were a kid and your mom and you stepped off the train, they wouldn't wait for you. They would leave, and your kid would stay behind. So it was life or death. Every situation was life or death. So you had to be tough. You had to you recognizes the consequences of your actions, but you had to take some of these risks to live. But you also had to not take too much risk because you die.
Well, you also you spend all this time talking to like my example, my grandma, and then they're gone, and you're like, God, I wish she was here right now, like
Yeah,
just to get more of that wisdom because there
yeah,
was no mental health, there was no. I mean, my grandfather dropped out of high school because he had to go to work.
yeah,
I mean, he was born 1911, so I mean, they went through
yeah.
the Great Depression as middle schoolers, high school.
But on the flip side, the world's a much better place. It's a lot better in the workplace than when I worked in it. A lot more respect for women, a lot more respect for multiple nationalities. I think it's much better now. Mental health, the way we raise our kids, there was no recognition of mental health. It was through different levels of discipline. The approach to maybe it goes too far in some cases, but in other cases, the stuff I've learned from parenting, my parents did their best. I love them, but I had to learn some new tools, given some unique situations within my family, and we've made some serious progress in regards to that. Men's mental health. My colleague in the office does a men's mental health group once a month. Men don't like talking about mental health and the challenges. Women tend to get a lot of help, have a lot more of a social network. Men, as you get older, you kind of just do stuff with your family and your kids, and then your friends fall by the wayside, and you have no one to talk to. So society's being more. People aren't drinking as much anymore. I saw that studies there. So there's a lot of good things that are happening in society that didn't exist before.
Yeah, the drinking I'm surprised at because when times get tough historically, people are
Yeah,
they turn to the bottle. And I
yeah.
remember the summer. I'm originally from Ohio, and I was back there, and I was just talking to a wine rep at a grocery store, and I said, "I'm like, yeah, I read this article about people are drinking less." She goes, "You wouldn't believe it." She goes, "You wouldn't believe how
Wow.
much the demand has dropped." And I was like,
Yeah,
"So there's validity because you don't know what to believe." And I've seen more recently that to what you just said about people drinking less, which again, I'm
Yeah.
surprised. I don't know if doing more cannabis or
No, they're just not seeking. I think what they're doing is they're replacing it with social media, because that dopamine hit, that escapism, they don't like we it would just turn to something else to do so. I would hope that it would be more towards physical activity. My kids are just really busy in the outdoors, so they're like their friends and that they don't want to bother with that. I mean, they get into occasional trouble, but not anywhere near what I did as a kid, and I'm thankful for it. But I think they're just in some ways they're way more mature about things like that, and other areas they're not as mature. So it's just a shift.
how excited are you for your book to come out?
Well, so far it's set for January of 2027, so it's a long ways away. But it's something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. I just wanted to make sure that it was something that I could have an impact, a positive impact on somebody, and not just do it for ego or for the sake of doing it. And I've been through a lot of turmoil in this COVID world with family and such. And I learned a hell of a lot. It transformed me into a different person than I was, 6, 7 years ago. And I've implemented a lot of these types of strategies around psychology into how I manage money and manage clients, and it's been really, really successful. And so I've taken that and put it into a book. It's going to be called Investing Through the Storm. There's storms in our life, there's storms in the market, and here are some strategies that I found very, very useful and very helpful for getting through those tough times.
Can you share one of the themes from it?
Yeah, so psychology is one of the major aspects. So what we often do is we compare and contrast ourselves all the time, and social media has really accelerated that. We're always looking, we always see people with these better lives than us, and we feel disappointed. And in the markets, we do the same thing. Look what gets the news. I made X amount of money on Bitcoin. I made X amount of money on Nvidia. I did this, and it's the casino effect, and everybody's a winner, and I'm not a winner, and I don't feel like I'm participating in that, and I'm being left out, and I'm not going to have enough money for when I retire, so I need to take these risks. And so I provide some strategies on how to get through that, to remove that. We do something called goals-based investing. It's about setting an investment policy around what you want to achieve with your life and who gives a shit what anybody else is doing with their life, and building a plan for just you and your family, and your kids, and integrating a lot of that philosophy around that, and then maintaining a path towards that. Now, there's something called karma, which isn't bad. You do something, you get something back. Karma is the bump in the road that reminds you that you need to get back on your journey where you're supposed to go in life, which is your dharma, or you could hit the ditch. And so there's going to be all kinds of karma bumps on the road in the markets, for example, or in your life. And what you do when you hit those bumps is critical. So I provide some ideas as to a bump hits in the road. What do you do? And how do you not react? How do you stay regulated and maintain your path towards it? Because it's never an easy path, but how do you get through that storm? And there's gonna be a lot of storms.
What is the biggest storm in your mind right now for your clients, and what you see ahead? What's the first storm?
Well, in Canada, I think there's a lot of worries about this country, and there's when you have turmoil, there's three things a person typically does, and I talk about this. One is you say, "Poor me." Two is you say, "Blame them." Or three, "What am I going to do about it?" And we're stuck on the blame them. We're stuck on blaming Donald Trump, and for a lot of our own self-imposed, problems that have happened over the last decade through various policies of the government. And it's easier to blame somebody, but until you get out of that blame somebody, you're not going to fix anything. So I think a lot of people are are worried. What I'm worried about is that we're going to continue to make these bad decisions, and either you pretend something doesn't exist, or like you when you face fear, you hide, or you face it, and we're hiding and we're blaming other people, and that's not productive. So I worry about the direction of this country. I also worry about the direction of the U.S. I'm more so self-centered with Canada, but some of the things that I'm seeing in the U.S. is very concerning. The polarization of society, the extreme right and the extreme left, the dualism. I'm right, you're wrong. Politics has become a religion. It's become either you believe me and you're going to heaven, or you don't, you're going to hell. And both sides are doing this. So it's almost like the Protestants and the Catholics of the old days, but we still believed in the same thing, right? We all believed in the same tenets. But just because we have a different leader, we're all, if you don't follow my leader, you're going to hell. And we're seeing more of society go that way. And I think that's one of the consequences of social media into our lives. And I don't like that. So those are the issues that are keeping me awake at night. Well, I meditate at night, so I try not to. I try to let those things go.
What amazes me about all this is how people are, the divide, and it's to me, this is just through my lens, how the absolutists, the people that are just absolute, absolute, absolute. And I just find it baffling. Like, I don't know. I try to be objective. Maybe you know me for an hour and a half now. I could be an absolutist in your mind. I don't think I am, but just like with this Venezuela, I mean, I raised some questions on it, and I'm getting hammered for it. And I'm just like, okay, well, why don't the United States government work on, the healthcare in this country? How about, making us, you keep making every April, we got to like slaves, turn our tax forms in. I mean, is that just a bad thing? And people are like, oh, you're a liberal. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Because people are thinking in dualistic terms. So it's either that's the only way you can access things. If you're a left brain thinker, you're only be able to think of either black or white, and this is the way it is. And you're a right brain thinker. So if you're thinking bigger picture and you're saying someone who is their front, you just can't get upset about it because the prefrontal cortex is wired in that to think that way. And whatever you do logically isn't going to change the wiring unless they go through crisis and they go through a personal turmoil and they're able to self-recognize that that's the way their brain is wired. And some people will go through their life saying they don't even want to. So you're like, you know what? Um, for those types of individuals that are not self-recognizing and don't want to do self-improvement, that's okay. You can do that way. I'm not going to be critical. I'm just going to set boundaries. So I set boundaries with those type of people so that I recognize that I can enter into a serious discussion or maybe even a serious relationship because of that stuck thinking and that wiring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and people also, I think the idea awakening is very painful for people. I'm seeing that with
Yeah.
some now. That to come to terms with what you thought was reality, and now
Yeah.
you're stepping into a new phase, and some people just can't
I
cope
can't
with
take
it.
it.
No.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, it's trauma, it's PTSD, and some people come out of it, and some people don't. And but there are some really good strategies to come out of PTSD and coming out and recognizing. It doesn't mean that you're. I mean, there's a fellow I love is Anthony DeMello, and his book called Awareness. But something that resonates with me is he said the path becoming a saint is often the same path to becoming a terrorist. So you just get that down that this is the way it is and everyone else is wrong. You got to try and break that mindset.
And that comes back to that absolutist attitude.
Yep, yep, yep.
Last question, because we started it and we never got because we went down a couple different paths. What is your take right now? What's happening in Venezuela?
So I put a tweet out and went viral. I had 1.5 million hits on it or a million hits.
Which is a blessing and a
About
curse, right, Martin? When that happens.
yeah. And it was on a friend of mine and her personal situation in Venezuela. So there's two ways of looking at it. One is for the people there. And for the people, they're much better off not having him or his regime. It was terrible, the stuff that they did. I went to Venezuela in 2004, I believe, right at the beginning of Chavez, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. The potential of that country is huge. It just went down the bad path of the absolutism and not sharing the wealth. There was a lot of corruption, there was a lot of oil money, but it didn't find its way into the people living in poverty. And so they did what they did in New York. They went to the extreme, and someone took advantage of that. And they depleted their energy resources, and they had to turn to drugs to finance the regime. And so it was terrible for the people. So for the people, this is a positive change. And I don't care what people say about Trump and what was legal or not legal, but this is something he did a good thing, and for those people, whether that was his intention or not, I really don't care. But the people are going to be better off if they can get a full regime change. But this is a step in the right direction, so that's good for the people. The geopolitical side of things, really interesting because he calls it the Dunroe Doctrine now, and getting rid of the sphere of influence of Russia and China in so close to the U.S. We'll see what happens in Cuba. Greenland is very interesting with the Arctic, and then what does this mean for Ukraine and Russia and Taiwan and China? So there's a lot of I am worried about the geopolitical side and the ramifications from Venezuela spreading into other areas for 2026.
Yeah, with Venezuela, I've been talking about this a lot, and time will tell. What I always feel like the people never get the benefits from any of this. Like the government's always, they
Yeah.
always find a way. And now, what will happen? Because to your point, they got rid of one person, the regime is still there, but what will the fallout be? I mean, could it turn
Yeah.
into a potential quagmire? And time will tell, right? I mean,
Yeah, and I can only hope and pray for the people. The positive is that this is a bloodless change in government. This isn't even you didn't have to send troops in like Iraq, and so there's been a lot of lives lost for a positive change, and that's simplistically, I know it is. There's a lot of other ways to read into it, but if you're protesting against material change, just think about the people, and the people are here are very vocal about how good it is that he's gone.
where can people find you, Martin?
I'm on Twitter. I've got a good presence there. LinkedIn as well. And my website, trivestwealth.com.
I enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to have you back on, and
Yeah.
appreciate you making time for me, and look forward to continuing to follow your work.
Awesome. Take care.
Mic drop.